A gun so heavy the plane had to be built around it. A cannon fires faster than you can blink twice over. Rounds tipped with a metal so dense it can punch straight through a tank's armor like paper. This is the weapon that turned a slow, ugly jet into the most feared tank killer in the sky. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why enemies on the ground learn to fear one single sound above all others.
This is the story of the GAU-8 Avenger, the 30mm cannon built into the belly of the A-10 Warthog. Most people know the Warthog as a tough, ugly little jet that refuses to die, but almost nobody understands the sheer engineering madness packed into the gun it carries. This is not just a weapon bolted onto a plane. This is the reason the plane exists at all. If you have got respect for the men and women who fly and maintain these machines, drop a comment below and type Warthog Strong. Let us get into it. Here is something that sounds almost impossible. When this cannon fires, the recoil pushing back against the jet is stronger than the thrust coming out of both of its engines combined. That means for a split second, while this gun is unloading on a target, the plane is actually being slowed down by its own weapon. Stick around, because this is only the beginning of how strange and brilliant the system really is. The gun that built the plane. Back in the early 1970s, the United States Air Force needed something new. The Cold War was heating up, and military planners were terrified of one specific threat: massive columns of Soviet tanks rolling across Europe. Thousands of them. The kind of armored wave that could overwhelm ground troops in hours if nothing stopped it from the air. So the Air Force put out a call. They needed a plane that could fly low, fly slow, take a beating, and most importantly, carry a gun powerful enough to rip open tank armor from the sky. Two companies stepped up to build that gun: General Electric and Philco Ford. General Electric won, and what they built would go on to become legendary. Here is the part that still surprises people today. The gun came first, the plane came second. Engineers did not design a jet and then figure out what weapon to bolt onto it. They designed the cannon and then built an entire aircraft around it. That aircraft became the A-10 Thunderbolt II, better known by its nickname, the Warthog. Think about that for a moment. This cannon makes up 16% of the total weight of the aircraft. If maintenance crews remove the gun for servicing, the plane cannot even sit normally on the ground. It has to be propped up on a stand, or it will tip backward onto its tail. That is how much this single weapon dominates the entire design of the jet. How the gun actually works. Let us break down what makes this cannon so brutally effective, and we will keep this simple. No complicated engineering talk here. The GAU-8 is what is called a Gatling-style cannon. Instead of one barrel, it has 7 barrels arranged in a rotating cluster, similar in concept to guns from the 1800s, but powered by modern hydraulics instead of a hand crank. As the barrel spins, each one fires in sequence, which lets the gun achieve a rate of fire that is honestly hard to picture in your head. We are talking about nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. To put that in terms that actually make sense, this gun can fire more than 60 rounds every single second. In the time it takes you to blink, several rounds have already left the barrel. Now here is a fascinating detail most people never hear about. It actually takes the gun about half a second to spin up to full firing speed. So when a pilot pulls the trigger, there is this brief moment where the barrels are accelerating before the gun reaches maximum output. Half a second may not sound like much, but in combat, every fraction of a second matters. The ammunition itself is just as impressive as the gun that fires it. These are 30mm rounds, and many of them are armor-piercing incendiary rounds, loaded with depleted uranium. Depleted uranium is incredibly dense, far dense than steel, which means these rounds can slice through heavy armor plating that would stop almost anything else. When a round like this hits a tank, it does not just dent the armor, it punches straight through, and the incendiary effect can ignite everything inside. Muzzle velocity on these rounds is intense too, over 3,300 feet per second. That is faster than sound, faster than most rifle rounds, screaming toward the target with enough force to devastate armored vehicles, bunkers, and fortified positions. Before we go further into how this weapon performed in actual combat, take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making content that honors these incredible machines and the people who operate them, and it does not cost you a thing. Engineering that solves a deadly problem. Here is something engineers had to solve, and it is honestly brilliant once you understand it. When you fire a weapon this powerful, physics does not just let that force disappear. The recoil has to go somewhere. As we mentioned earlier, the recoil from this cannon is so strong, it actually exceeds the combined thrust of both engines on the Warthog. If that recoil pushed the plane off course even slightly, pilots would struggle to keep their aim locked on target during a firing pass. So engineers mounted the gun slightly off to one side of the aircraft, not centered like you might expect. Why would they do that? Because the barrel that is actually firing at any given moment sits directly on the center line of the plane. This clever positioning means the recoil pushes straight back along the jet's center line instead of twisting it sideways. The plane slows down slightly during a fireburst, but it stays locked on target instead of veering off course. This is the kind of detail that shows just how much thought went into this system. It was not enough to build a powerful gun. Engineers had to build an entire aircraft that could handle firing it without losing control. And accuracy was not an afterthought either. Pilots flying this jet at around 4,000 feet altitude can hit a target inside a 40-foot circle roughly 80% of the time. That level of precision, combined with raw firepower, is exactly why ground troops came to trust this aircraft so deeply. Proven in combat. All of this engineering means nothing unless it actually works when lives are on the line. And this weapon proved itself one of the most decisive ways possible. During Operation Desert Storm in the early 1990s, the A-10 and its GAU-8 cannon were unleashed against Iraqi armed forces on a massive scale. The results were staggering. This aircraft and its cannon are credited with destroying more than 900 enemy tanks during that conflict alone. 900 tanks! Add in armored vehicles, artillery positions, and other hardened targets, and the total destruction climbs even higher. Ground troops who fought in that war still talk about the sound this aircraft makes when it comes in low for a gun run. Pilots describe flying in slow, deliberate passes, almost crawling across the sky compared to faster jets. But that slow approach is exactly what let them line up devastatingly accurate shots. For American soldiers pinned down and under fire, hearing that cannon rip through the air overhead became one of the most reassuring sounds in the entire United States military. This aircraft did not stop proving itself after Desert Storm either. It has flown in Afghanistan and Iraq again during the following decade, and in operations against ISIS. Time and again, when American troops needed close air support, when they needed protection right above their heads in the middle of a firefight, this jet and this cannon answered the call. Still flying today. Here is something that might genuinely surprise you. Even after more than 5 decades of service, this aircraft is still flying combat missions today. In recent operations in 2026, A-10 Warthogs were flying active missions during what has been called Operation Epic Fury. These jets were used against hostile militia forces, against naval threats, and were even part of a dramatic multi-day rescue mission to save a downed American service member deep behind enemy lines. Decades after this aircraft first entered service, it is still out there, still protecting American forces on the ground. And here is the twist that a lot of people do not know about. For years now, the Air Force has pushed to retire this aircraft completely, arguing that newer stealth jets are better suited for modern warfare. But something remarkable keeps happening. Every time retirement plans move forward, Congress steps in. Lawmakers, many of them working directly with ground troops and veterans, have repeatedly refused to let this aircraft disappear too quickly. In the most recent defense budget discussions, Congress required the Air Force to keep at least 103 of these aircraft in active service, even as officials pushed for faster retirement. Why? Because soldiers on the ground still trust this jet more than almost anything else in the sky. There is simply no replacement that inspires the same level of confidence when American lives are on the line. Full retirement is now expected sometime around the year 2030, though that timeline has shifted before, and given how often Congress has intervened, it may shift again. Why this weapon matters. At the end of the day, The GAU-8 Avenger represents something bigger than just a powerful gun. It represents a philosophy that the United States military has held onto for decades. That protecting troops on the ground matters more than flashy technology or elegant design. This aircraft was never meant to be beautiful. It was never meant to be fast or sleek like other fighter jets. It was built to be tough, to take damage and keep flying, and to bring devastating firepower exactly where American troops needed it most. Every single design choice, from the placement of the gun to the armor protecting the cockpit, was made with one goal in mind: keeping soldiers alive and defeating enemy armor without hesitation. That is why, even after 50 years, veterans and active service members alike still speak about this aircraft with real emotion. It has earned a reputation that few weapon systems in history can match. The GAU-8 Avenger is not just a cannon. It is proof of what happens when engineers build something around a single, uncompromising goal: protecting the people who serve. If this story gave you a deeper appreciation for the men and women behind these incredible machines, go ahead and hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories honoring the United States Armed Forces. We will see you in the next one. That's the full script, right around your target length. Want me to run the next one? Maybe the B-1B Lancer or another jet from your combat IQ. Faceless lineup?